So the purpose of this is to kind of get the information out there for people that maybe have never rode any of the TriMet services, or have been hesitant to because they don't know how it works. And some of the stuff we're going to cover tonight is what services are accessible, any steps you need to take before riding, if there's training available, what type of mobility devices are allowed, stuff about PCAs, companions, and service animals, and the cost to ride.
I got to add that you got to mention that picture.
Oh, yes. I forgot to add, you can see, I'm not sure when this picture was taken, but that is Franklin down there.
It's an old picture. That's the Milwaukee line too. So that's the line I ride all the time. But that's an old picture. That's me in a Q6 chair that I haven't had for 4 years. I haven't used in 4 years. But you can see my phone holder and my quad hands and that handsome haircut back in the day.
That picture was just off of Google Images. So that's funny.
And I also want to mention that this is a train that is not accessible. This is the 1 series or the 100. Anything that starts with a 1, like this is a 117, that kind of tells you where the trains come from, what series the trains were. They change the numbers on the trains. So you can also see that this is that it's a 1. These have stairs on the whole train. This whole train, which is 2 cars, you see the whole train is 4 cars all together. And they never put 2 of these trains together. So so either front or back, like this is the front one. So I would have to wait until the back one came around or run down to the back side to get on that one. I just want to make sure why we had the picture.
Thanks for sharing. So this is we want to talk about what services TriMet has that are accessible. And according to their website, all their buses, trains, and transit centers and stations are fully accessible to people using mobility devices, including like the Max, the buses, and then their Lyft program. Franklin, have you rode all 3 services?
I've rode all the services. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have the Lyft. The Lyfts there are the ones that are the easiest when you have actually a driver that will help you. They will actually tie you down. It is mandatory to be secured in them. In the Max, there is no tie downs, and either the streetcars, and then the fixed route buses that kneel. Those are it's optional. I would recommend it that people, especially in power chairs, get tied down, because if the bus driver has a sudden swerve or a sudden stop, you're going to slide around in your chair or manual chair. But the power chairs, weighing as heavy as they are, they could actually hurt another person as well as yourself with them moving around or tipping over. And the like the three-wheeled scooters and stuff, they tip over. And I've heard many times that they'll tip over if they're not tied down. So, and each driver is supposed to ask you every time you get on if you want your chair secured. And so my suggestion would be is let them secure you. It's much safer to be secured in a moving vehicle. I mean, it's like not even having a seatbelt on. But and Portland is one of the few cities where you don't have to mandatorily be secured. I think everybody, in Washington, you have to be mandatory secured. Plus, you have to have a seatbelt on and a shoulder belt too as well.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so TriMet's Lyft Paratransit is more of it's less of like the buses and trains. It's more like I think you have to live 3/4 of a mile off of the bus line to qualify. And you have to go into their transit mobility course and get become eligible. And then once you are, you can start using the Lyft services. Franklin, can you talk about that, the eligibility that you did?
I sure do. What they'll do is they'll come and get you for free. They'll take you downtown and they'll go through the whole rules with you. They'll have you drive your chair onto a platform similar to the Lyft. It has a lift. that actually lifts you up and puts you in the thing. So there's no ramp in these at all. This is a van, and they also have buses. So they have the Ford vans, and then they have the Chevy buses. The buses are bigger, and you get more wheelchairs in them, up to 5 wheelchairs in them. These are only 1 wheelchair in this, so you can't bring a friend with you in one of these in a wheelchair. And these are more comfortable ride. You know, with the Portland roads have deteriorated so bad now that riding in the buses is kind of it's hard on you sometimes with as they hit different things if the bus driver doesn't slow down enough, as well as speed bumps are really bad in the buses themselves. So the certification is they take you down there, they have you run through that, they see if you can actually use those. There's 2 different certifications. There's a certification where you can only ride lift, and a certification where you have a multi-plan where you can ride either one, that kind of thing. So they actually check you to see if you can ride the max. Now during COVID, they didn't do any of this kind of stuff, so they've started back up, I think, again to do it. My recertification is every 3 years. So they'll every 3 years they want you to come in and see if you still need the service, depending if you're still in a wheelchair. And with this service, you have to have the exact address that you want to be dropped off at, and you have to do it the day before by 5 p.m. You have to call them, or you can do it online and do that kind of thing where you have to tell them where you live and your exact address, and then where you want to go and their exact address, and they give you a window of a 30-minute window of when they can pick you up, kind of thing. And you have to be there in that 30-minute window. You have to be in that area.
Yeah.
They do give a 15-minute call ahead of time. Sometimes it's not guaranteed, and it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes you'll get a 15-minute call, which is great, I think, because at least you get a little heads up of where they would be. But you can't rely on that because it doesn't always come. So you can be waiting for that 15-minute call, and then all of a sudden they're there.
So set an alarm.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to be at that half an hour thing, and then they say they call you, but they don't always call. You know, if they can't find you, and then they'll leave without you. And every time that they've done that with me, that they send another bus to come back and get me.
Got you.
Kind of. And a lot of things is like some places don't have correct addresses. It's kind of frustrating, or they don't have addresses at all, like the transit centers and like the park and rides. And then there's some that have many different entrances, like the school campuses and stuff like that, right? You got many different exits and entrances. And even if you give them a specific entrance, sometimes bus drivers just see it as a Pacific University, and they'll go to a different entrance, and then you're not there, of course, because you're at the other one waiting for them. So a lot of times I would recommend calling them ahead of time, telling them, you know, if your pickup is at 4 o'clock, call them at 4 o'clock and say, hey, I'm right here, I'm at this place, and so that the dispatcher kind of know the things. And I don't always do that, but that's one thing I'm really going to start to do, because the last twice pickups, they've actually gave me a no-show because I was at the place where I was supposed to be picked up, but the driver couldn't find me, which was kind of silly, but it's something that I really try to work on with them. But what you can do is I'll let you finish the rest there, but that's pretty much what the lift service is. The eligibility, there's a form to go through, and Casey's going to go over that.
Wes, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. I think Franklin kind of addressed it, but I was wondering if TriMet keeps track of, you know, you said no shows, and then do you get blacklisted at any point? That's one question. And then the second question is, are the drivers very understandable about the variability of certain locations, like the park and rides, or the what was the other one? Campuses?
Some are, but not all of them are. Some are just like, if you're not there in 5 minutes, they're gone. Actually, you only have a 5-minute window if they can't find you. And some will say, it's kind of frustrating because some will go out of their way to find you. And same thing with some dispatchers. So a lot of times if you get if you get a dispatcher that you don't like, call back again. And if they and you find one that will actually go out of their way. Some will go out of their way to help you, and other ones are just by the rules, extremely by the rules. And if you're not there in 5 minutes, then you're out of luck. But my idea is just to call back again. I've done it a couple times where I just called back again and got somebody that was more friendly, somebody that wasn't having a bad day. I guess they are human, and they're out there in the traffic and stuff, so they get kind of upset sometimes at everybody and are a little demanding or a little frustrating. And you do have, the rule is every 3 months, if you get 3 no shows in 3 months, then you can get suspended, and then that kind of thing. And the thing about it is, I've got more than 3 in 3 months, but I've called and explained the reason. And usually the only reason there's been is because they weren't where I was, kind of thing. They couldn't find me, kind of thing. So that is something you don't want, no shows, of course. Just the availability, as well as if you need to cancel, you're supposed to cancel an hour beforehand, before your pickup time. If you do that, then it doesn't hurt your record at all. You can cancel the day before. Cancel at door and no shows are the worst. Those are the ones that are the dings for you. So if somebody comes there and you're not ready and you're going to be more than 5 minutes, you have to cancel at the door. That's considered one of the no shows, kind of the same kind of thing.
Well, for anybody that's interested in the eligibility, I did include how to apply online, who to call about applying that way, and also the email of where you'd send an email requesting like maybe a paper copy.
Casey, can I add something?
Yes.
So I use TriMet Lift. I live out in Oregon City. I've had several instances where they farm it out to Broadway Cab, and Broadway Cab just never shows. And I've missed physical therapy appointments. I've missed doctor's appointments. I've argued with, and the reason I say that is because I use Ride to Care usually, but they'll pay for my monthly bus pass if I use TriMet. But like when they farm it out to Broadway Cab, I just have had no success with that at all.
Jesse, I'm wondering, have you brought that to their attention?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
Jan, do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say a couple things and introduce myself.
Yes.
My name is Jan Campbell, and I chair the Committee on Accessible Transportation for TriMet. I also have done consulting for TriMet, and I use a motorized wheelchair, and so have been very intimately involved with all the things that you're talking about. And Jesse, we have had a lot of issues with the cab companies, and you'll get a website later, hopefully, and you can pull up a lot of the reports in the committee that I chair and be involved if you want to. All our meetings are by Zoom, virtual, and you can be involved in the ad hocs, etc. But that's a big issue because they have not had drivers. The shortage of drivers has really caused an issue. And they have now contracted with 2 other companies. The Lyft program has. So we're hoping that the turndowns or the late responses, not necessarily turndowns, I shouldn't say that, the late responses will not be as high. I think I'd have to look, I'm having a meeting tomorrow, but I want to say they're around 80-something% on time, but we wanted at least to 92. And regarding the malls and stuff, there are certain places that the Lyft has when you go to parks, etc., that are for only drop off and pick up, and they have those. So if you're at another place, that could be difficult. And where they drop you off, your initial ride, where they drop you off, that's supposed to be where they pick you up. But again, they have certain spots, for these larger malls, like I say, parks, etc. So those are just some of the things that I was listening to that you might want more information on.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here, and I thank you for sharing with us. West, I think you were first. Did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, sure. So, to anyone out there, Jan, maybe Franklin, maybe, whatever came of the PDX Wave program, and is it still working or operative?
Do you know, Jan?
I do know. I was waiting to see
Oh, go
who else might know, and I was just gonna fill in. It is still on board. I have only used it once and was not real happy with it, but yes, it is.
And maybe you could just, for the sake of this recording and others that don't know, what is the PDX Wave program and how did it come about briefly?
So the PDX was where we would have a central place for a person to call, and then they would find out what modes of transportation are out there and accessible. So like if you wanted, you didn't know, you could call this number and they would say, there's a LYFT, an accessible LYFT available, or there's an accessible cab available, or whatever. You would have to call them yourselves. They do not call. And their options to the LIFT, the lift, because again, those have to be reserved previously, like Casey said. Although we are working right now to get the same day request. And I don't know when that'll come on board, hopefully very, very soon. So you would, they would not be involved in that, the LIFT, and of course the regular buses that a person would ride. Or the West, and I don't know, I don't think the West was mentioned, but the West is caught out on the west side and it goes out to Wilsonville. And then you can transfer onto that. I do things at the legislature, do business in Salem, and then I transfer on to the Salem shuttle that's accessible. And it's only $1. I believe it's $1. I haven't done it for about a year. $1.25. It's quite reasonable. And then they have different spots in Salem that they will also drop you off.
Yeah, the last time I rode the SMART, which is the Wilsonville transit system, it's actually free. It was paid by for the merchants, as well as the Canby one, if you ever want to go out to there. I was a tester for Wave program when they first brought it out, and they had a to go anywhere in town for $5. It was a $40 cab ride for $5 kind of thing. But the problem was they had to use an app to get it to bring us down. The whole Wave program was worked on an app. And a lot of these taxi cab drivers did not want to deal with it. And the whole idea was to see how well that they would do with the Wave app, so the Wave company could actually get you. Yeah, a taxi is going to be very expensive if you ever go down to Portland. I mean, from my house out to Gladstone is about $75, kind of thing. So, and I've had to take that one time. The Lyft program did not have a driver. So it was one that we were at the end of the pandemic when they just did not have enough drivers, and my oncologist actually paid for my ride all the way out there, so all the way home, because the Lyft didn't come get me, that kind of thing. But the Lyft program, the Wave program, was only in Portland, so it couldn't take me home, but it could actually get you around Portland. Up to $40 they would pay for that whole thing. And it was very difficult because of the reluctance I mean, you had a couple cab drivers that were happy to use it, but very few of them. Some of them wouldn't even want to do it if, they would lose the $35 for the ticket. They would just say, okay, just forget it. There was that much resistance for them to do that kind of thing, which was very frustrating when you can't. The West program is pretty nice. That is a full-size train that goes from Beaverton to Tigard to Wilsonville. And then the Wilsonville one, you will have to be strapped down. It's part of the things, as well as Canby one and anything in Vancouver, which is CVAN. So there are those 3 other ones that we can use, that kind of thing. The Canby one was $1 for a long time too, but now the merchants are paying for it. They're trying to get people out there. And the Canby one goes all the way to Woodburn. It goes from Oregon City to Woodburn. It's called the 99X Cat Bus, that kind of thing.
Thank
I
you.
guess what I can
Yeah.
add.
Yeah, you have to be able to make those connections. And the Wilson, the Smart that goes to Salem, again, I think it's like $1 something. But you've got to hit those connections. And if you don't hit the connections, then it's very difficult, for sure. And I, being in a motorized wheelchair, used Wave twice, and they sent out for the LYFT, they sent me out like a medical van, and I'm not sure who they use now, but I had a friend with me, and they treated you like you were a patient rather than a customer, and so I won't use it again for that reason.
Good to know.
Yeah, Lyft was contracting with Metro West, so they were using those Sprinter vans. It was very very convenient when Lyft could do it, and that would take you anywhere. But they wouldn't bring you back. They would take me home, but they wouldn't come get me and bring me into Portland. That was the LYFT Lyft kind of thing. And they would take you, I mean, they took one of our friends down to Corvallis for whatever it cost. I mean, it was very cheap. But it was one of those things where I think it was like 1/3 of the price of a regular Lyft kind of thing. So it was very, very economically feasible. But on the other hand, they wouldn't come get you. They would even take you to the coast, but they wouldn't come get you. It's like a really bizarre thing. So you could only go one way if you go out of Portland, but you had to start in Portland too, which made it even more difficult for me because I had to go to Portland first, and then I could go and take them to wherever I wanted to go. Okay.
Next, we're talking about the fixed route buses, and they are all equipped with either a boarding ramp or a powered lift. And you know, some of the tips that people have said is to make sure you wait in view of the operators so they know to deploy the ramp or lift when they're pulling up. And then if it's not deployed, to make sure to ask. And then once you pull in, to look for the priority seating places near the front of the bus. And that's where the securement areas are, where you can ask to be strapped down. And then while you're riding, you either push signal strip or pull the cord next to the window to let the operator know you want your next stop. And then once the bus stops, the operator will remove your securement straps from your wheelchair and deploy the ramp or lift. Franklin, do you want to talk about riding the buses?
Sure, I gotta correct you a little bit on there. You can't, if you're in a wheelchair, you don't want to pull the cord because there's a double bell that tells the driver that you want the ramp put down. So you have to push the wheelchair lift button, not pull the cord. If you pull the cord, they're gonna think you're gonna. I mean, a normal, an able-bodied person can pull the cord because they can walk down, but the driver has to know where to stop the bus so that lift will land. And if they're a good bus driver, they'll know that you need room to turn too once you get off the things. Not all of them know that. Sometimes they'll put you right to a pole or something like that, or off to the edge. And the really good part is if they have to pull it actually out a little bit, then they kneel the bus. I haven't seen a lift like this bus in a long time. They're all ramps that are available right now, and the ramps come out. The scary part is the ramps is they have warning lights and all that kind of stuff, and still people walk right like they're riding into them. I haven't seen a bad accident, but I've seen them awful close. But you do have to wait for that thing to come all the way down before you can go out. But you got to be sure to push the button on the back of the seats. Another thing is you have to have the seats lifted up. And there's a trick to some of the seats. The ones that don't have the round knob, they have a little U-shaped grab thing on it. If you push down on them, that will release that knob. So you have to push down on them with one hand and pull that little grab thing out, and then they'll come up real easy. And that's
to flip the seats out of the spot where you park your chair?
Right. So you want to flip those out of the way, and then you also want to flip the back one up and then move the bar in. That'll give you enough room to maneuver in, stuff like that. And one other tip is I really don't like people sitting behind me, because if the chair, especially if you don't, and they can't sit behind you if you have them strap it down. But if you don't have them strap it down, you don't really want people sitting behind you, because I think I think almost all of us carry backpacks. I carry bags and backpacks, but I'm kind of exception to the rule, but at least they carry a backpack, and you're very vulnerable for theft if that backpack and there's somebody sitting behind you. There is cameras on every bus and every platform, but that doesn't mean somebody's not going to steal something from your backpack or open it up. And another thing is it's dangerous actually, because if that bus suddenly, jerks to one direction, you could slide back and smash their legs and kind of thing. You figure a 300-pound wheelchair sliding back plus you in it, it's gonna hurt somebody. And so I would recommend that you open that seat and move that bar out of the way. That'll give you actually room, especially with a front wheel drive chair, to maneuver out of that position, because you have to back up, you have to pull the rear of the wheelchair out, and then do a little kind of anti-parking, parallel parking kind of thing to get out of that. And another trick of this is I always want my joystick on the inside of the bus, because if you have it on the outside, as people walk by, their backpacks or their bottles or everything can hit your joystick. And actually, I have a they call it a goalpost style. It's quad friendly joystick, and I got one time on my Q6 back in the day, some lady's purse hooked onto it, right, and it pulled that goalpost off my joystick. So I just had a little thing sitting there, and it's just so if I have to sit on the other side, I always protect it with my arm, and they'll hit my arm. It seems like every time somebody walks by. But I'd rather have that than being immobile while losing a joystick, or you could even hit your joystick enough so it wouldn't work. Actually,
that's a good tip. In your experience, will the drivers help move the seats if somebody doesn't have the ability to do it themselves?
They're supposed to, but they don't always. And they're supposed to ask you if you want to be secured, but they don't always do it. And sometimes they just don't want to get out of their seat. Again, you have different, they're having a bad day, or they just don't want to do it. They really are supposed to help you. But even me as a quad, I can do it, but you have to know how to do it. Like that one kind of seat where you have to actually push down on it. So I just lay my wrist on top of it, push it down, and then it is like a loop. So it's easier actually for me to do it than the knob one, where you have to actually get around it. And as long as you push it down, you can actually pull it and lift it up.
Awesome. Jan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got cataracts and I'm trying to get some surgery, so I don't see real well right now. Yeah, and we're starting new training of the drivers, and that's going to be one of the major things that they're always supposed to ask, not assume, but just ask, because there are some individuals, it's difficult for people to ask. And we do have new buses now. So the tie downs or securements are different in the new bus. And I don't know if you've all seen the new bus, but the new articulated buses on Division Street, they're called the FX, because TriMet now is going to go with, which is a big issue for the CAT committee, fewer stops, and what they want is faster service and more efficient. And so when you do that, then you leave out a lot of stops. So there's a lot longer distance for an individual to walk or roll to the next stop. So, but there are new buses, right? This is a very old bus.
Yeah. Jan, you said that there's going to be new driver training coming up. If there's ever an opportunity for, some people in our organization to come out to help, be there and provide advice, it's something we'd love to do.
Oh, great. I will let them know that.
And I'd recommend that everybody that's in this community, have them tie you down. That way they get more practice at doing it. They'll be more efficient at doing it. They'll know how to do it. Most of the time, the drivers don't even remember how to do it, because most buses have a bar that they have to pull up and they can slide it out. I've had drivers try to put those tie downs over my feet, which would be would be terrible if there was an accident. It would just tighten up on my foot, right? It was like one of those things where it's like, what are you doing? And they don't even realize that you. And at one time, I was trying to explain it to a woman, and she was trying to push down on this little pin that it's a little round knob black knob that you pull up, and at the same time you have to slide this heavy bar over, and that'll give you a wide enough stance so you can get a V-shaped tie down, which would secure your chair, right? Being at angles. Instead, they have this crooked kind of tie down, and then also another thing is it goes across your feet basically, because it's like in the middle and it will stick out a little bit. So it's like, and if you don't keep training them, it's quite different. And there is other ways that they tie down, like the small shorter buses that run on very few lines. They have a trap door where you have to flip the trap door open. You have to hook the Sherlock mechanism, which is the ratcheting mechanism, into that to give you that 3-point thing. And then they have a bar that folds down in the back. And those you only load on one side of the bus. So those are really crucial, that if you ever ride in those smaller buses, you have to have them tie you down. Otherwise, it's really vulnerable for the people that sit next to you, because your chair could slide out and there's no place for their legs to go. So you would crush their legs if you did slide out with that chair. And those buses, you also don't sit side by side. You sit tandemly, like one in front, one in behind. That's kind of thing. Another thing about the FX2 is they have automatic securement on them, which is a quantum's a little securement thing. It has a little bar that comes down and then it slides over and it holds the bottom of your chair over. But you have to sit backwards though. So you're facing the back of the bus, not the front of the bus, which is an odd thing for me to do, because you can't see your stop coming up other than reading it on the reader board. And then you sit side by side, both backwards, kind of thing. I think you can sit on. So there's one automatic one and one manual one. So the manual one you can sit forward if you don't get tied down, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But that's only fine. The FX2 only goes up division, so it goes from downtown up division. So it's and they were out of service for a long time, so they brought them back after their premiere review because of a recall. But and I don't think there'll be on every bus line. It's just because these buses are extremely long. The good advantage to that is you don't have a guy with a pop can sitting next to you, spilling pop can juice all over the place and stale beer and all that kind of stuff, because the back of the bus has places for bikes. So they figured out real easy that if I want to come on with pop cans, I can go to the back of the bus. And usually there's not, even if there is bikes there, they have room for their pop cans there, kind of thing. Another thing you have to watch out for is the pass ups. If there's other people with wheelchairs on there, you can't get on, of course, 2 wheelchairs, of course. But also if there's people with strollers, people with too many bags, too many strollers that you use as carts, they'll have junk in the strollers, especially double strollers. There's a few of our in our community that use these as their little homes. They bring them around everywhere. So they'll have to pass you up and you have to wait for the next bus. So that's a real inconvenience there. It doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. And it's always when you're late, it seems like, and it's going to make you a lot later, that kind of thing. But, and another thing I guess I could have added when we're doing the Max is the Max has 2 different sides to it. One is the short side, which has 2 seats, and then it has a seat that folds up and down, and that will fold up. And again, you have to push the button to get the ramp to come out. So you have to push the button that's underneath the seats, or the one next to the door, to get the ramps to come out there. And there's one that the seat folds up. A lot of the Max trains, though, that seat that folds up, I'm not strong enough to pull that up. I can't grip it enough. Some of them you can't lift up. Some of them are very easy and they slip and they'll fall down, but some of them are very hard to lift up. But usually somebody will pick it up for you. That'll give you, a lot of the series, like the Series 5s and 6s, they have a larger area to go in on one side and then a shorter area on the other side that has 2 seats on it. So
yeah. Camera, did you have a question?
I don't. I was gonna ask you, Casey, if you were gonna, or if anyone was gonna talk more about the quantum self-securement on the FX2. I live on just off of Division, and so that's my main bus. And I do really like that self-securement. I like being able to do it myself, but I do think that the drivers could use some more training. It can be clumsy sometimes in communication, and it is a little awkward that it's backwards and I can't see the light bar. So there's no way rear facing for us to tell other than landmarks. And if I had some other disability that prevented that, I would, or not hearing, I would really be up a creek. So there's room for improvement, but I really do like it. And I also just wanted to say, I've met some wheelchair users that are resistant to securement, and I total respect. I personally prefer to be secured because before I was in a wheelchair, I was on a bus accident on one of the express routes of the TriMet on the freeway, and I was the projectile. So after that experience and getting through that, I would hate for my heavy chair to be the projectile with me in it,
Yeah.
So for the sake of others and for my own well-being, as a walker on a TriMet bus, I would like a seatbelt for that reason, but that's obviously not convenient. So just wanted to speak to that and to say, if you haven't tried that quantum machine and you don't mind sitting backwards, it's pretty cool.
Thank you for sharing that.
Cameron, would you mind sharing what you think the drivers need more training on the quantum one? Do they need to wait longer or that kind of thing? Or?
Well, there's a sequence that some know and some don't know, and in order for the quantum machine to work and to use it independently, the quantum machine has to be turned on. It has to be enabled. But then when I pull up to it, there's a sequence where the bus has to be back up and off of its tilt, and then I can engage the machine. And then to get out of the machine, when the bus stops, I press the little symbol. It makes the double ding so the driver knows I need to get off. In order for the quantum machine to release, the driver has to secure the parking brake, or the emergency brake has to be engaged in order for the release to work. And so can't tell you how many times I've been sitting there waiting for that sequence to happen. And everyone on the bus is waiting, and the bus driver's like, so are you coming? And I'm like, you have to engage the brake in order for the quantum to release. And then it becomes this weird, I stepped on their toes. People are waiting. It's embarrassing. I'm facing an entire audience of people while they're waiting, and I'm preventing them from getting to their place. So as we all know what that's like. So definitely the sequencing and the use of the machine. And I also feel like recently, especially maybe because there's been some new drivers, I've had a lot of situations where drivers do not clear the area or assist in clearing the area, and I have to ask, and that's weird. And if they're having a really bad day, they can be real pills about it because it's embarrassing, and I ask them to do their job, and I don't know what kind of day they had, but it's really messed up my day. So I feel like more training on disability needs, but I've not had anyone be downright disrespectful or touch me in an awkward way or anything like that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
I was told there's 9 different steps to lower the ramp and stuff, and then there's added one with the thing. So there's 9 different things they have to do to get that ramp to come down. And it seems more and more complicated, where there's less with the older than like the Series 3 buses. These newer buses have quite a few steps for the drivers to do, and sometimes they just forget. And they're newer ones, like I said, they don't even know how to operate the straps themselves, that how you have to tighten them up and how you have to do it. And I've tried to educate a lot of them to doing it. But another thing is that I've had people say that I've worked for TriMet for 5 years, and I've only had to do this once. It's like 1% of the time. So when they're training, is what they tell me, that they just have one quick course on how to do it, and then they're supposed to figure it out. So they get frustrated with. And then the new FX, that's brand new, and then I think they had a lot of drivers ready to use them, and then they went back to the regular buses, and now they've brought them back
Yeah.
again. Because I know when they first came out, they knew how to do it really well because they were fresh trained, and of course, you know, they would drive different buses, so they're always on you, even though they've been trained on it. And if they're not trained on it, they might forget that one little step, and then it's not going to work. That's probably.
Thanks. Next, let's talk about the MAX trains. All of them are currently accessible, correct?
Hey, Casey,
Yes.
do you mind if I share a little bit about my experience on the Max?
No, please, I would love that.
I had my hand up. I was waiting for.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
No. So I had a I don't ride the buses too often, but my preference. So it's really interesting to hear, you know, Franklin and Tamara, your feedback, and I think I'm gonna probably reconsider maybe my practice, but about getting strapped in. Typically, when I get on a bus, I just get on and they ask if I want to be strapped in, and I say no, and then I just hold on to the bar, you know, and one of my wheels, and it is wobbly. Like my brakes don't, they're not super secure, but I'm able to kind of hold my place, and it's mostly out of convenience. So I can just get on and off, and I'll have to wait for anybody to secure me. But one of the questions I have is, if I was to get strapped down or secured, is it just my chair that gets strapped, or is there a strap for my body? Because if there's no strap for the body, then if the bus goes flying, I would just go flying out of my chair. And whereas if the bus like took a hard stop, I'm with, and my chair moves, I'm in my chair, and I have a little bit more like chance of staying in it. So but I don't know, like if there was a strap for my body, then maybe I would be more inclined to be secured to the bus.
So now this is kind of a roll of the dice, because the newer ones actually a seatbelt and a shoulder belt on them, and you can see them when they pull up. They're up high, and they're on this section, and they also have a hook on the back of the seat that seatbelt runs into and runs across to, kind of things. I actually don't like the seatbelts on because I already am fastened into a power chair. So as long as the chair doesn't move, I'm not going to go anywhere. But I can see where you would be troubled with that. Now, some of the older buses don't have seatbelts on them, but the newer ones do have a nice seatbelt. A nice, it's like a Sherlock kind of recoiling one that will tighten up, kind of thing. So that's one thing. I mean, and if you learn the series on the buses, the numbers of the buses are the series that they came out in. The newest ones are in the 4300s, I believe. Jan, is that right? I think they're the 4300s. They also have the electric one, and the electric one gives you a lot more room, which is kind of nice. Instead of 3 seats, there's 4 seats, so that makes it a little bit more room when they flip up, kind of thing. But yeah, that they do have them, but they don't have them in all of them. So you are kind of taking it, it's kind of a roll of the dice thing on those. And they're supposed to ask you if you want a seatbelt on too, and they're supposed to put it on if you want one.
Thanks for asking that, West, and thanks for sharing, Franklin.
You bet.
And so the MAX trains have ramps that extend out to the sidewalk for easy boarding. No securement is necessary when riding the MAX. Franklin, have you found that it's not needed in those?
Well, the thing about it, it's not needed in them if you have a good driver. If you have all these new drivers, and it's kind of scary sometimes. You will slide around if they take the corners too high. It's like I take the orange line a lot, and there's a 90-degree turn there when you go across, when you go from 17th to McLaughlin. And there are a couple times when the drivers took them too fast, and my chair will slide out. And another thing that matters is if it's a newer MAX, the seats are not, and the part that's in the wheelchair area is a grippy surface. It's like a sandpaper kind of rough surface, and a power chair will sit in that really well, actually, especially if the drivers are good. If you take that corner too high and the the grip is all gone, all wore off, kind of thing, you will slide out. So I try to hook my little hands onto one of the railings to make sure when we go into that, just to make sure, that kind of thing. And another thing too is, in the Max train is if you go through the tunnel, it is extremely noisy and loud. If you're real sensitive to that kind of noise going through the tunnel, you should bring some noise canceling headphones or earmuffs or something like that. It troubles a lot of people because of noise sensitivity. And this is one thing you want. Other than that, other than the tunnel, the ride in the Max is really nice. That kind of things. Again, priority seating is a problem too. Sometimes when you have people that don't want to get out of priority seating, most of the time they will, or kind of things. Another thing is when you push the button, it takes 10 seconds for that ramp to come out. And you don't have a lot of time to get off the train. A lot of times somebody will be waiting in front of, and then all of a sudden they'll start making beeping noises, and they'll wait the whole 9 seconds. And then at 9 seconds, they decide they want to go somewhere else. And you're behind them, and then they decide they want to go somewhere else, go out to another one. And they won't wait for that extra second for the doors to open and they can walk out. So they delay your exit of it sometimes. Of course, as long as you get a foot blade in the door, something they'll open up again. But they will close on you. You have just a few minutes to get out most of the time. And gotcha. Again, we've got new drivers, a lot of new drivers that don't do that thing. Another thing is, I always, as you see in my picture of real proof, I always wave at the driver to make sure that they know I'm getting on, because there's a lot of multiple stops, and you might not be getting on a blue line or a red line. You might not be getting on them. So, but just by the driver seeing you, they might not know that you want that train. So I always wave at the driver. And then again, you always got to make sure that it's not a number, a 1 series, which is the 100 and something. So you got to check on the number. And the 1 series are pretty easy to remember. They have 3 windows in the front that are like a bay window style, compared to these slopey ones like this picture here. Those are much more modern ones there. They're supposed to be getting rid of those, I believe, Jan, right? They're with the 6 series, which is the newest ones come out, which will have a better reader board, kind of things like that. I haven't ridden in one yet, but they're supposed to be coming out with those and get rid of the 1 series, which were the original ones. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that tip. I was going to say, like the buses, you definitely want to wait in view of the operator so they know that the ramp is going to be needed. And then when boarding, the ramp is at the center of the floor cars, so you have to look for the blue accessibility symbol to know where you can load at. And then you want to wait back while the ramp deploys. And then when you're riding, you want to make sure you press the ramp request strip located before your stop, so they know at the next stop to redeploy the ramp for you. This just kind of goes over some of the fares. So, the average adult fare is $250 for your ride. I think it's 2.5 hours. But if you are seniors age 65 and older on Medicare or have a disability, you can get the Honored Citizen card, and that cuts the fare in half. It's cuts it way down.
Half price.
Yeah.
But it is going to go up, right, Jan? I think they just okayed a price increase, as far as I know, but it's going to go up to like $280, I believe.
I think January 24.
Oh, you did read that. Okay.
I think is what I read.
Yeah, and there are programs for subsidies, but it usually requires you to be part of a nonprofit organization. That you get services from. Now, I think that you might yourselves be able to get that, where you could hand those out. But I think that time right now is over. I can check, but you apply through TriMet to get fare subsidy, which is free, free subsidy to ride the system.
Wow, I'd be interested in that. Usually it's what I've seen is the low income is if you just have a low income or if you get an EBT card kind of thing, you can get the honored citizen things without a disability or without being 65 or whatever age they they picked out. And then Lyft is a different thing. It's always $250 for each ride that you take. So a Lyft card is always different, and you have to get a special card. You can't use these cards on Lyft. You have to use a special Lyft card, and you have to be okayed for it. Has your picture on it, and then it also has an assistant card too. You can get an assistant card with a hop card too. It would have a separate honored citizen with a double A on it, and it's assigned to you. And that means you can bring a PCA with you. I guess you're gonna put that in there, but also you can bring a companion too for another $250. So you can bring up one PCA and a companion, and you can also ask the Lyft people if you can bring more people. So you can actually bring more people with you, but you'd have to okay that with them before you can't just show up with 5 people.
Yeah.
You have to
And
okay.
your PCA ride's free.
Yeah.
On Lyft, but not your companion.
Right.
And so the fare is the same across the buses, the Max, and the West commuter train, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And the streetcar too. But I mean, that's
Yeah.
usually a hop card on the streetcar. The thing
And
is,
if you have a Lyft pass, you can ride them all free. But if you don't have a Lyft pass, then you have to make up the difference on the others, because it's more to ride the Lyft than it is for the biggest crowd.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Vancouver, you can ride free if you have a fixed route, but you cannot ride it with your Lyft pass.
and well, what was I going to say?
Well,
Oh,
you can, but it's more money.
and you can use hop card on the C-Van and the Wilsonville. Well, Wilsonville you can't use it, but you can use it on the C-Van. So the Vancouver van as well as the Vancouver C-Tran. So you can use it in Vancouver. It will just take the same amount off. They do charge you a different kind of thing. They might charge you extra because the C-Van Lyft charges $1. So they'll charge you another $1.50 if you're going across the river. It has something to do with Oregon and Washington's agreement. But you can ride the regular route bus with a hop card, and they don't mind.
Yes. And then speaking of the hop cards, that's kind of what this topic is, getting the hop fast pass, especially once you've been deemed eligible or determined eligible for the Lyft program. Then you can use that across all of the services. And there seems to be some good benefits with that. The reduced fares for those who qualify, and then you can earn day passes and month passes by frequent riding. Wes, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I had a question about it. So I use the hop. I think there's like an app. So I just tap my phone to whatever the console is on the bus. Does that register the honored citizen credential as well? Like if I got that?
Yes, so once you might have to apply for both separately once you have your hop app and stuff, then you can bring in your honored citizen thing. I believe that's how it's worked.
What I had to have a doctor's note and bring that into the TriMet system, and then they register you as an honored citizen. And then once you're registered as an honored citizen, you can use your app to every time to do it, because your account will be that you're an honored citizen kind of thing. But you have to if you're over 65, I believe it'll automatically do that. But if you're under 65, you have to bring in the doctor's notice. And I did it a long time ago, so I don't know, if they've actually changed that, but that's usually what you had to do. I just took it downtown to Pioneer Square and brought in that paperwork, and then they automatically put you in as. So on the app it'll say honored citizen, and then you can check it. It'll every time you ride, it'll subtract $1.25, and then the second time it'll another $1.25, and then it's free all day from then on, because it goes to the max amount. That's like the Lyft goes. The maximum amount is $74. So if you if you spend more than $74 on max at $250 a ride, every ride, they'll only go up to $74, and the rest of the rides are free. It's like you paid a monthly pass, and that's kind of the way that they work.
Yeah, so from everything I gathered on the website, you still have to bring down like a doctor's note to become an honored citizen if you're becoming one for a disability. Tamara, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I was just gonna, I raised before he said that I have the honored citizen card, but I had to take a doctor's note and the form down to downtown, and I got it that way. But I was unable to load it onto the app, my honored citizen pass, because I'm not 65. So the reason that they gave me for that is that if I were 65, I would sort of double qualify. So they would just, if I looked 65, maybe I don't, but I'm not 65. So I have to show the card, which has my photo on it, to show that I am an honored citizen, because I don't qualify otherwise. It's because I'm disabled, not because I'm a senior, and not because I'm not yet on Medicare either. But even still, my card won't work on the app. So I just use it. I tap the card.
Franklin, have you figured out how to add yours to your app? I'm just curious.
Yeah, mine is automatically on the app. Yeah, you can see it. So I don't know how. I guess they were able to do it with mine. So, but yeah.
And I know one other person who did, but they couldn't get mine to work, and I'm still kind of confused. But it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I wonder if Jan, do you know of where Tamara could reach out to maybe get help with that? Which department? Oh, you're muted.
Or fixed route, right? You could call, let me look up the number and I'll get it. You could call customer service and ask them. You can always ask them that. Or I don't know if you're ever downtown, but you can go into the TriMet one, at Pioneer Square.
Yeah, where I got the card, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Or call, I think customer service is 238 ride, 503-238 ride.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm hoping they could figure that out for you, Tamara, so you could just have it all in one place. This kind of goes over, we've talked about it a little bit, the PCAs, the companion and the service animal or pets. And as Jan mentioned, your PCA riding with an eligible Lyft customers, they don't pay fare, they're free. And customers may bring along one companion and they just pay the regular Lyft fare, and additional companions can be scheduled if space is available, but you need to call ahead before that. And just know that your PCAs and your companions need to be picked up and dropped off at the same place that the customer is being taken to. And also, TriMet welcomes all service animals with no permit required, even though they might ask you to verbally verify that it is a service animal. And your service animals must be on a leash and either lay at your feet or sit on your lap and not get on a seat. And that pets and companion animals are only allowed on board if they're secured in an enclosed carrier.
That's an interesting picture I wanted to do. This picture is of a newer bus. Here you can see there's 4 seats. It gives it a lot of room, and there's nobody sitting behind you. So this is a high series bus, like a 4300 or something like that.
I don't know if that's a TriMet bus. It's just a Google image of somebody on the bus with their pet.
It's very similar to the TriMet buses, the newer ones. So it's
gotcha.
Either it's extra room. Normally there's only 3 seats. This one has a 4 seat kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So some people with disabilities do not care for that seating arrangement because of that barricade behind the woman using the chair. See that? So people with walkers want to sit in the seat behind. There's no place for their walkers in front of them. We have heard that from some of other types of disabilities.
Well, that's good to hear.
The walkers and the rollators, though, they are supposed to be folded up, but they don't enforce those rules a lot of time, which means they'll roll around on the thing and they'll run into your chairs and sometimes.
Yeah.
So one thing to be notified that a lot of times they'll have things in the bottom of them, so they don't want to fold them up, as well as strollers too. They won't have babies in the strollers, but they'll have the strollers there. So that's one thing you have to make sure that they put the brakes on or something like that. You kind of ask them, will you please put the brakes on? Because they do roll around quite a bit, kind of things. And that's kind of one of the things that's a problem.
Yeah, it's really hard, as we all know, when you're working with different types of disabilities, and that's what we hear on CAT. Works for some with certain disabilities, and it doesn't with the others. And again, the walkers, they want them available to them. They don't want them folded up, because if they need to get up, or they use them to get up, and they can't hold them up by themselves. So, I mean, you just hear all these things, and they just don't cover all types of disabilities. It's just really, really hard. I like this seating, this one that you're showing, also because more of the room. But again, we've had a lot of people not happy with that these other things.
There's also a seatbelt behind there too, so that's part of the seatbelt that they can strap on, and then they have tie downs on both sides. So that's kind of an interesting seat. You have more room. You don't have somebody behind you trying to steal your backpack or whatever's in it too, because they're behind a little barricade there. It would be pretty obvious if they were trying to do that kind of stuff. But if they're right behind you, I mean, it's kind of a nerve-wracking when they're right behind you, kind of thing. And they have no protection if your chair slides backwards if it's not secured. Of course, if it is secured, they have to pick those seats up because they can't get to the tie downs without getting them. That's another good reason to have them tie you down, to keep people from sitting behind you.
Yeah. It seems like that barrier would add a layer of protection for both, the rider and other people, able-bodied people there that may be sitting behind you.
I guess that's one thing I should add too, is the drivers are not allowed to tell another person with a disability to move to let you in. So they can mention that we have somebody coming on or something like that, but they're really not allowed to move people around, because you don't know if a lot of people don't want to move once they sit down. So it can just be a passover kind of thing if they won't move, and that has happened before. Most of the time people will move, especially people that actually, because they can sit there if they don't have a disability, but they can't occupy the seat. They have to give priority to people, elderly people, and people are supposed to anyway, or people with disabilities or within the chairs. But again, there's only 2 places for us to ride the whole bus. So
yeah. I know with Jan here, it's been awesome, but this portion is kind of, if anybody tonight wants to offer feedback or share experiences that they've had using TriMet services, that we could maybe bring to their attention to hopefully improve the accessible riders experience in the future. It'd be great to hear. I know we've gotten a lot of good feedback already.
And we do have committees on fixed route, and then the other is paratransit. They meet virtually. They're open to the public. Every other month they switch, and I've written down quite a few things that I will bring to those chairs. We have different chairs for those committees, and again, I believe they're on the second Wednesdays, I believe, from like 9:30 to 11. And then we just have ad hocs that are working on specific issues. But if you can pull up the website for CAT, you'll find all that there. But for sure, if you want to participate, just come on board on the virtually.
Awesome.
We
Yeah.
may go in person soon or partially, but that has not been decided yet.
I'll share that out to the attendees for anybody that's interested in coming to those.
We have one tomorrow. The full business meeting. It's every Wednesday, every third Wednesday of the month, our full committee.
Cool. I'll be there.
Good.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody coming, and this is great for any other questions or anything for Franklin, who's our resident expert at all things TriMet. Or any other comments. Yeah.
I don't know about expert, but I have experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lived experience. That we are the experts, right? With lived experience.
Exactly.
Thank you all very much. Thanks, Casey. Thanks,
Yeah.
Franklin, Jan.
Definitely. I want to thank all you guys for coming. I am gonna stop the recording here. If I can figure out how to.